In a world of chaotic noise, the podcast Keep Walking With Me searches for potential solutions towards the best version of ourselves. One likes to make questions, the other loves to find answers. Nuno and João are partners from the Walking Mentorship, and they bring the inside look in the life of the people they walk with. Welcome to the podcast Keep Walking With Me. Today is our last episode of our first series of these podcasts, and like always, we have a very special guest. But the best way to present our guest is to ask, in a nutshell, who is David Clutterbuck?
An old man who has been around forever in the world of coaching and mentoring since formal coaching and mentoring really began way back in the very early 1980s and late 1970s. And somebody who has a great deal of fun educating people around the world in terms of how coaching and mentoring can make a tremendous difference, not just to individuals, but to the world around us.
Wow. Well,
that's a great answer. But let me follow up on that, because on your LinkedIn, you have a very curious statement. And let me read so I don't make it up. The last fully active survivor of the pioneers of coaching and mentoring. Do you want to expand on that?
It's just that pretty much pretty much everybody in the field has been sort of came into the field in the late 1980s at the earliest, or 1990s, and there's just a handful of us. I wouldn't say the very last person, but there's a handful of us from that very early time who are still around, and a smaller group of us who are still active.
Well, thank you, David. I have a question for you that it's kind of a curiosity. Do you have any idea how many people you have coached and mentored throughout your career?
Well, it depends if you mean directly or indirectly.
Both, maybe.
Okay. I think directly probably about 3,000 to 4,000. But indirectly through all the training programs that we've done and the development of programs within schools, within companies, governments, God knows, and so forth, we're probably talking about having influenced a couple of million people. But that's a complete guess. I have no way of really measuring it.
Wow, that's outstanding.
That's impressive,
Impressive.
Really. So we know you also use walking as a tool for thinking better and to self-mentoring. I think it's what you mentioned. Obviously, at Walking Mentorship, we use walking in nature as one of the pillars of, actually the three pillars we do, mentoring while walking in nature. So do you think there's a magic here? There's something that needs further exploration?
I think something special happens when you're in a natural environment, and I mean natural not just in the sense of nature, but environment to which we've been designed as human beings, or evolution has designed us for. So if we allow ourselves to be attentive to what's going on around us, that actually allows us to be more at rest, if you like, and at peace with the world around you. So then you can now start to think more deeply internally. So there's this balance between having a conducive environment around you and the quality of the thinking you do, just reflecting internally. And some of my fondest memories are things like sitting in a mountain pass with looking in one side down to a great valley way in front of me, and above me the clouds are above my head. And you can be sitting there you lose sense of any sense of time, and you can alternate between awareness of the world around you and your thinking around whatever the issue is that you have. And another great memory for me is going on a skiing holiday. The first time I'd been on a skiing holiday for 2 weeks. And on the very first day, some skateboarder crashed into me, broke my collarbone, and then left me there with injured on the mountain. So I had to ski down the mountain with a broken collarbone and sort of was patched up. So for 2 weeks, I couldn't do anything except walk. And that was actually a really wonderful experience. I missed the skiing, of course, but I made the most of it because walking in that white, dramatic environment really gave me a sense of developing all sorts of interesting new ideas that I hadn't had before.
That's funny. That brings us to the old question: good luck, bad luck. Well, it all depends in what you make with it. So
yes, absolutely.
You did the best.
Luck is an attitude of mind.
Yes.
That is a nugget, really. Well, on that note, do you want to suggest us your first music? So we can
Okay, this really interesting. I found it's an interesting exercise, and so I think my first piece would be the Marrakesh Express by Crosby, Stills and Nash. And the reason that I chose that one was because for my whole life I've really enjoyed doing long distance treks. And when I was at university, I hitchhiked all the way around Europe, across to North Africa and down to Marrakesh. And just the sheer exuberance of being free, being able to visit these places and absorb oneself in the local culture. That's something special.
It is, for sure.
Let's embark on the Marrakesh Express.
Let's go.
Looking at the world through the sunset in your eyes. Pulling the train through clear Moroccan skies. Ducks and pigs and chickens call. Animal carpet wall to wall. American ladies 5 foot tall and blue. Sweeping cobwebs from the edges of my mind. Had to get away to seek what we could find. Hope the days that lie ahead bring us back to where they've led. Listen up to what's been said to you. Would you know we're riding on the Marrakesh Express? Would you know we're riding on the Marrakesh Express? They're taking me to Marrakesh, all on board the train. All on board the train. I've been saving all my money just to take you there. I smell the garden in your hair. Take the train from Casablanca going south. Blowing smoke rings from the corners of my mouth. Colored cottons hang in the air. Charming corporals in the square. Straight to lepers we wander at home, yeah. Would you know we're riding on the Marrakesh Express, yeah. Would you know we're riding on the Marrakesh Express? They're taking me to Marrakesh. Would you know we're riding on the Marrakesh Express? Would you know we're riding on the Marrakesh Express? They're taking me to Marrakesh, all on board the train. All on board the train. All on board.
Well, great to listen. And actually, it makes me ask you, looking at the world today, where are you planning to focus your energy on the near future?
I have a whole raft of fascinating projects underway. One of the projects is looking at coach maturity. So how do coaches make the transition from being a beginner to being a real professional? We try and avoid the word mastery because it has all sorts of negative connotations. But having that kind of practice, which is wise and represents a developmental stage, both as an individual person and as a coach, that's well beyond where you started. And so that's one project. Another great project that I have, I think it's a great project. We have the ambition to create 5 million school-age coaches and mentors over the next few years. And this is important, I think, because when people have these skills at an early age, they take them into the workplace with them. They take them into their lives. They can manage their careers better. They can be better leaders. There's so many benefits from making these critical life skills of coaching and mentoring available not just to an elite, but to everybody.
You actually change the world that way. You change the future.
I try. I'm hoping to try in a small way.
Wonderful.
If each one of us does his little piece, then things will eventually get better, and they are getting better. Just a curiosity: do you have a favorite walking route? Some particular experience, or maybe?
Gosh, I have so many. There are some particular places in the valley below Mürren in Switzerland, which is a lovely long walk up to some waterfalls in the high distance. It's a long and tiring walk, but it's worth it just for the sheer joy of what you see when you get there. And it does have the advantage that there are a couple of guest houses, of places for a drink on the way there, up and down, so that's one of my favorites, I guess. But I have many others from my home and around, and from my country home. Yeah, it's great. Having multiple favorite walks is you always discover something new on those walks, even though you've done them hundreds of times before.
Yeah, we know that for a walker, this is in the category of unfair questions, but anyway, we like to do them anyway. So maybe there is another one. How is it possible to balance some of the core elements of coaching and mentoring, for instance, like valuing and respecting alternative ways of thinking? I mean, it's at the core, versus this kind of growing assumption that if you are not part of a professional association, you will not be accredited as a good practitioner. What is your take on that?
Well, it's interesting. I think there's a process of maturity that we go through, and it's good to have some kind of benchmarks to see how you're growing. Now, the one of the things which I find deeply disturbing is the notion that the number of hours of coaching that you do have any correlation whatsoever with your competence and effectiveness as a coach. We can find no evidence of this at all. And in coach assessment centers that we've done, we consistently find that the majority of coaches are still stuck at a very basic level. It doesn't matter how many hours they've done. It doesn't also matter how much they charge. There's no correlation between that and competence. And so what we're looking at from the professional bodies is to give you a ground base, something to grow from. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like that's the soil that we create, that we have, and we are the seeds that are planted in that soil. So the degree to which we're prepared to reach for the sunlight and to grow is dependent on many things. But a large part of it is the environment in which we do this, but also, how robust was the seed itself when it started. So it's a bit of a tortured analogy, that. But I think there's a strong role for professional bodies in helping people to focus on things like the need for supervision. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we have to question, what professional bodies are not just there for the benefit of the coach, they're there for the benefit of society. And if they lose sight of that, if they think about themselves as a business, mm-hmm. if they focus on the coaches running businesses as opposed to coaching as a vocation, yes, then I think there are some real ethical and practical issues related to this.
Well, thank you very much for the clarity of your answer. And maybe this is a good time to inspire us with a second piece. With a
Yeah,
second
well,
music.
I thought I'd go for something much more upbeat. I think the film The Blues Brothers has got to be one of the all-time classic exhibitions of exuberance. It's got so much energy, and for me, how do we get energy? We get energy by going out and by absorbing it from our environment. Sometimes, but music is a good part of that. So I think it's probably one of the most energizing pieces of music that I'm aware of.
Let's go with the Blues Brothers.
Let's live.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're so glad to see so many of you lovely people here tonight. We would especially like to welcome all the representatives of Illinois' law enforcement community who have chosen to join us here in the Palace Hotel Ballroom at this time. We certainly hope you all enjoy the show. And remember, people, that no matter who you are and what you do to live, thrive, and survive, there's still some things that make us all the same. You, me, them, everybody. Everybody.
Everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs somebody to love. Someone to love.
Someone to love,
Sweetheart to miss.
sweetheart to miss,
Sugar to kiss.
sugar to kiss.
I need you. I need you. I need you. In the morning, when my soul's on fire. Sometimes I feel a little sad inside. When my baby mistreats me, I never find a place to hide from you. Sometimes I feel a little sad inside. When my baby mistreats me, I never find a place to hide.
You know, people, when you do find that special somebody, you gotta hold that man, hold that woman. Love him, please her, please her. Signify your feelings with every gentle caress. Because it's so important to have that special somebody to hold, to kiss, to miss, to squeeze and please.
So, we're back, and just bringing up a different angle here on your experience. And I mean, for sure, you have coached or mentored many leaders across the years. What did you learn from that? Where did you get from those experiences?
I think the thing that I've learned increasingly over time is not to take myself too seriously. I'm not sure I ever did take myself particularly seriously, but I take even less now. And to grow old disgracefully, I think is the phrase. It's about learning to question everything. It's about recognizing that power is something that is a force of nature. But how we use power, whether we use it for good or for ill, that's a whole different area. And we have a big research project at the moment looking at the whole issue of coaching and politics. So how do we work with politics in organizations to make it actually deliver, to make authentic politics, the use of influence for positive outcomes, as opposed to the negative use of politics for individual or narrow party gain?
Well, then I guess we can stay on that note of, politics and leaders. And I would like to ask you, looking at the world leaders today, what do you think would be the most needed areas of improvement for them to work?
Well, it's a constant concern for me, or question I keep asking and don't have an answer to. And that is it. What is it about humanity that allows psychopaths to get to the top in so many cases? And how can we enable people to have the really meaningful conversations? Because so many of the world leaders now are there to create dissent and to appeal to a particular audience, but by basically creating separating them out from others. And so what we've got is the thinking, the normal, moderate middle in most countries is being squeezed out by extremist politicians who really have no sense of the long term. The book, The Good Ancestor, is a great example. Is a great call to action for leaders, but most of them are not taking any account of it. And I think if we can try and educate or change the systems in order to educate leaders so that they are not polarizing people, so that they are actually seeking for consensus and for change that is long-term rather than short-term, for change that actually seizes opportunity rather than simply just avoids risk all the time. Yeah. These I think will be major things that the coaching profession could help with. However, coaches on the whole tend to stick to their remit. I've been brought in to help this executive deal with this particular issue. They have to run better meetings or to get promoted to the next level or whatever. I think that the role of a coach ethically should also involve helping that leader to become a more rounded, more humane human being. And yet we back away from this. I think it's, for me, it's written into the contract. I won't coach anybody who I don't think is open for that kind of conversation and that kind of self-reflection in terms of evolving into the kind of leader that the world needs.
Well, thank you.
Well, that connects perfectly to my next question, which is you are known for asking massively difficult questions. And that has obviously a lot to do with great coaching, because many times that is the secret. So what questions does the world needs to be asked today? What are we needing to question?
I think The Good Ancestor basically sums a lot of it up when in saying what are the questions that your grandchildren's children will be asking? How will they view the decisions that you take today? I think that's a brilliant question. And it's, what another question for leaders is, what does the world need from you right now? Yeah. What's the real contribution that you could make that would make that would actually make the world a better place? And to get them away from thinking about this year's profits or their own personal bonus, to help them to work into the long term.
Well, thinking about long term, it's always somehow a good remark to think about challenges. And you say you take a major learning challenge each year. Do you want to share with us what you choose this year?
I haven't yet this year because of COVID. We haven't been able to do anything. We've not been able to go out of the house. So it usually happens by serendipity. If I get the chance, and we can do it. I have set my sights on doing some wing walking, so to learn how to walk on the outside of a plane in the air. Now I don't know whether I'll get to do that. It's on my bucket list of things to do, but I've done everything from lots of sporty things through to learning to be a stand-up comedian was probably the most scary thing I ever did.
That is definitely a challenge. I think I would fear more stand-up comedian than actually walking on the wing of a plane, to be very honest. Well, you talk very often about positive change. What exactly do you mean by that?
For me, positive change is a change that helps somebody, an individual, to become more in tune with their environment, or for a company or a society, but it's something about being aligned and in tune with the world around us. Hence, that's why doing coaching while walking is a great way of achieving that, because we've got a constant reminder of it. I like to depict coaching and mentoring, from which coaching derives, in large part, in the terms that Joseph Campbell, the researcher who looked at the great sagas, the heroic sagas, where mentors appear frequently. And the critical thing there is that the mentor does not walk in front of you, or the coach does not walk in front of you. They walk beside you. And that being beside somebody on their journey is the core metaphor, I think. We're not there to walk behind them or in front of them, we're there beside them. And that's when you're beside somebody, that's when you can have the deepest conversations. It's really hard to have a really strong, meaningful conversation with somebody who's in front or behind.
Well, really thank you for your answer, because I think 2 or 3 years ago, in the end of one of our walking mentorship programs, one of the participants in the last meal shared something that I connect with what you just said, because we keep repeating, keep walking with us, or keep walking with me, depending on the situation. And this person said, oh, I finally understand what you're saying, because the implications of such sentence, they are bidirectional. So it's not really about you or me, it's about us, and it's about walking together side by side. So thank you for clarifying that. But
let me add,
yeah,
can I add something there? There's, over the last 30 years, we've done experiments with thousands of people, where we've got them to talk about what we call personal reflective space. And that's about the way that you go into yourself and how you think about an issue deeply. And the relationship between the depth of your thinking about an issue and the speed with which you walk or run, or whatever, there's a clear correlation. So essentially, as you start to think more deeply about something, you slow down, because your blood is taking more of the sugar that would go to your muscles and using it in your brain. And as you reach that point of insight, and then you understand things more clearly, you may very often have actually stopped. But then as you come out of this, the brain no longer needs to work so hard. And then you find you pick up your pace again. And time again in my own ramblings, that's what happens. You see it at work, you get to that point of insight, and you by that time just slowed down. It's almost like taking your foot off the pedal when you're driving the car, and not being aware that the car is slowing down.
Absolutely.
Totally.
No, yes, absolutely. Before we go into our third and last music, I wanted to ask you the following. Today it's quite usual to hear about coaches and mentors in so many walks of life. I mean, you go to a gym, there's probably a coach waiting for you. You go to a wellness center, there might be a coach or a mentor waiting for you. So do you think there is an oversupply problem or a lack of relevance towards coaches or mentors on the horizon?
I think we've got a sort of creep, if you like, as to what is in terms of the understanding of the term, and it goes back to the fact that that coaching, in its origins, was very directive. It was a coach was a tutor at university, and then the coach became a sports coach. So somebody who first in rowing was the first instance in sports that we know of, who would gallop on a horse shouting instructions at the rowers, and then tennis became there, and then it spread out across a lot more areas of sport, and coaching only really becomes this more conversationally designed process of helping people access their own inner strength and inner understandings. Only really, well, with the work of Tim Galway back in the 1970s, and really only firmly in the last 20-25 years has it become what we now think of as coaching, as a conversation that helps somebody work through particular issues that they want to address, but in a relatively non-directive way. I mean, there is no such thing as a non-directive conversation in coaching. The moment you choose the question you're going to ask, you've just directed the conversation. But it's a relative factor here. So I've completely forgotten what the original question was actually now.
If you think there is an oversupply problem or or a relevance problem.
I think so. So we've got lots of people calling themselves coaches, meaning different things by it. And I think if we start to talk about a professional coach, then that begins to help. But then we've got lots of people inside companies who are actually doing coaching as part of their normal job. And so I think my sense of this is where we are going anyway, but where we also need to go, is that that coaching and mentoring are two skills which will be just like reading, writing, and arithmetic. They are core skills for people to have. Hence the focus on kids at school. But if people, but just as in everybody at school learns mathematics, doesn't make you a mathematician or an accountant.
True.
So we can call what they are doing maths, they're doing figures, but that's not the same thing. So there's a level of competence, a level of professionalization, if you like. So this is my vocation. I do this well, and I take a lot of training to develop my skills at doing this. Yes. That sets a real coach apart from somebody who's just doing it as in the same way as somebody would do mathematics and tot up their shopping list.
Well, which put us in the right position to hear your third choice of a music.
Yeah, I thought about this for a while, but I think there's something evocative about this particular piece of music, something highly evocative about this. And that's an association that I have with being in beautiful places. I'm thinking, for example, of being puffing away in the high Andes, but just above the clouds, actually looking down across these enormous valleys and trudging through the snow, and seeing the condors flying in and out of the clouds around the mountains opposite me, and that sense of grandeur and connectedness. It's such an evocative thing for us, and if for things to be evocative, we have to be open to them. We have to see them and we have to experience them. And I think that the pureness of the sound in the Miserere is something that just brings all that back for me.
Well, then let's go.
Let's listen to Miserere. Well, thank you so much for this music. It's actually it's one of my favorites, and connecting with your introduction, I really feel it's amazingly a connection to nature, because it's basically human voices which are fully natural if you think about it. And it's such enlightening and really deep music that I think it touches everybody that listens. So, well, thank you very much. And unfortunately, we have reached our last question. Unfortunately, because I'm really loving this talk. But this question, it's a bit of an unfair question, but it goes like this. If you had a time capsule and it was going to be sent into space or wherever, and someone tomorrow or in a million years or something, we don't even know, would find it, what would you like to put inside? A message or objects, an idea?
I think I would like to capture from 1,000 children around the world their hopes, not just for themselves, but for the world around them. And I'd like to put those all together, and I think for somebody in 50, 100 million years, assuming we're still around, to be able to actually explore and just see those hopes of those children, I think that would be a pretty meaningful thing, no matter what point in history they were in.
I'm quite sure it will be. Well,
I just would like to, well, thank you. But before we leave, there are two things that really got stuck on my mind throughout our conversation. The first one is really the pleasure of being on a conversation with a truly free mind. I mean, the world is so full of narratives these days, and you might agree more or less, but they are out there, and many times they are pushed into our lives even without noticing. And what I take out of this conversation with you, and not by chance being the last episode of all this series of truly beautiful people, I think it's really the cherry on top of the cake to have another free mind tell us that when you question, when you open up to question, usually you gain a lot. And that's the first thing. The second, I have to tell you that I have doubts, and I was thinking, should I ask or not? But now I think I already know the answer. I was thinking, how old are you, David? Because I thought, are you 40 already? Did you cross that threshold? Because the feeling I have is that I am talking with someone much younger than me, than myself. And this is, it's truly inspiring and a blessing. So personally, I feel very honored, very humbled that you are walking with us on this last stretch of a full year of podcasts. Keep walking with me.
Well, I have to say, of course, as you know, I'm 73, going on 16, and I'm absolutely enjoying it. And you know, the first part of what you were saying, we do talk about the narrative, and I think if you mispronounce it, narrative becomes narrative, and too much of what we hear is narratives. It's blinkered, and I think we should be trying to create for ourselves and for those around us and the wider environment. Let's have widatives instead of narratives. That's the way to actually to be aware of everything that's around us. If we just focus internally, we miss all that stuff that's surrounding us. That's so wonderful.
That's a great advice. I think we should all follow it, and starting by ourselves and hopefully spreading the word. So, well, actually, it's humbling to talk to you, especially because of your own humility. You make it all so simple. So it's lovely. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Step by step, we walk together towards the best version of ourselves. For more information about our mentoring programs, visit our website walkingmentorship.com. Keep Walking with Me, it is a podcast inspired by the Walking Mentorship experience.